Try HelloFresh UK to get 60% off your first box, 25% off for 2 months, and to, of course, help support this channel. Link is down in the description. Thank you for your support. Hello and welcome along to Matchday 14 Premier League predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. We are back today to go through the whole weekend fixture list, including a big preview of Brentford v Luton Town. Unfortunately, the second game this season I've not been able to get a ticket for, but hopefully the Hatters making a trip will have a good day out. We then got 2 big home games in a row. It's a big week in the Premier League with 3 match days coming up, and we will be here to predict all of them. We'll be back on Sunday for the midweek fixtures, but between now and then, we are going to give you our predictions for all 10 games this weekend, including Brentford v Luton. I'll encourage you, as always, to get involved in the comments and give me your score predictions too. And if you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in Sunday's recap. That one will be late in the evening after all of the Sunday football. But for now, before we get to our predictions for all the other games this weekend, let's have a look ahead to Brentford versus Luton Town. And to do that, we have to have a look back at both of the games last weekend. Brentford were frustrated in a late 1-0 defeat against Arsenal. For Luton, it was much the opposite emotion. A fairly late winner against Crystal Palace for their first home Premier League win. Albeit with the 12 minutes of stoppage time after, it felt like an absolute age following Jacob Brown's goal. But let's talk about that Luton game quickly, because it probably wasn't one of the best home performances of the season. Luton soaked up a lot of pressure, relied a little bit on Thomas Kaminski and the back three to win a number of duels. And of course, the goalkeeper and Tom Lockyer made it into Premier League Team of the Week. But a very good performance from the keeper when needed. Of course, a wonderful goal conceded as well. But overall, Luton defensively dealt with the main Palace threat well. Through central areas against Odsonne Edouard and later on Mateta, the back three were generally superb. Of course, there was that one hairy moment at the end where the keeper missed and the Palace header rattled off the woodwork. But prior to that, the only real big threat was from wide areas. Of course, with players like Elise, Eze in the first half as well, there was always going to be that little bit. And we saw from the goal exactly where Palace's main threat was. I do feel there was a turning point in the game when Decore went off injured, I've got to be honest with you. I thought Will Hughes struggled in midfield. You saw for the second goal where Ross Barkley turned him inside out. And I just felt that Palace lost a little bit of control in the midfield areas then. But what we've got to reflect on again from a Luton point of view is the counter-attacking quality. Goals from set pieces have been a big part of our season, and Ted Mengi with his first for the club, a very tidy finish. For the second goal, very much a carbon copy of what we saw against Liverpool. Quick counter-attacking play, Ross Barkley finding that pass to unlock the door and get the ball out wide. And this time, Ogbene's cross perfect, Jacob Brown's run brilliant. And while the defending left a little bit to be desired, it was a wonderful counter-attacking goal again. And those are the moments for Luton. We talked earlier in the season, even going back to say the Chelsea game, where yes, we were soundly beaten and yes, we were outplayed for the most part, but we had a number of those good counter-attacking opportunities and perhaps didn't make the most of them. But that's something that's starting to happen now, and we're starting to look a threat in front of goal, which is going to be crucial if we are to survive this season. The big news, though, is despite what was a pretty average performance, we were solid, we stayed in the game, and we managed to get the 3 points. There were some standout performances again. We mentioned those in defensive areas. But without Marvellous Nakamba, I thought Pelly alongside Barkley did really well. Then Jordan Clark when he came on as well. We are starting to get a couple of players back, which is lovely. And considering we had to play a little bit without the balance in wide areas due to Kabore's concussion, I thought we were really impressive generally at containing them in wide areas, aside from the wonder goal, of course. But the big bits of the day for me were seeing Townsend looking fitter than he had in the previous games. He's progressing really nicely. No doubt he's going to get a contract to the end of the season. And of course, Jacob Brown getting his first goal for the club too. A really important moment for Luton. The more attacking players you can get in the goals, the better it's going to be for the rest of the season. So really thrilling to see us pick up the win. Of course, thanks to other results, there's a little cushion now to the bottom 3 with that Everton points deduction. But you look ahead to this weekend, you've got Burnley v Sheffield United, you've got Forest v Everton. There's going to be teams picking up points just below and just above us. So there's no point getting too excited. I mentioned it before looking ahead to next month. We've got these 2 home games coming up after Brentford, but the away games are the big one this month. If we lose all 4 home games against the bigger teams, but win away 1-0 at Bournemouth and Sheffield United, we're going to be out the relegation zone at Christmas. There's no doubt about that. So it's going to be a bit of a weird month where the away games are the ones we're probably targeting a bit more, whereas the home games against Arsenal, City, Newcastle, and even Chelsea to an extent are perhaps a little bit of a bonus over the festive period. So it is going to be careful managing the squad. It is going to be interesting to see how we manage players approaching yellow card suspensions, what games they'll try and target for them, because we all know that happens. And of course, from a long-term point of view, we've got to hope the Nakamba injury isn't too bad, because particularly in those home games against those stronger midfields, we're going to need a player like him badly. But the big question for this weekend is what to expect from Brentford. And of course, in many ways, they are a club we can look up to. One of those sides that didn't play the stylish football that everyone expected when coming up, and played a bit more direct and played to their strengths, and have done it incredibly effectively. Of course, we have got the benefit for this one that Ivan Toney does miss out. Had some fun battles with Tom Lockyer in the Championship, didn't he? And of course, we've had some horrible days at Brentford, the 7-0 being one of those that springs to mind. But we have got what I think will be a competitive game on our hands here. Brentford, of course, against Arsenal, set up very differently to what we'll expect in this one. Brentford are excellent at playing on the counter against the big teams and then targeting the ones that they can win. And I think we're going to see a much more entertaining game. Brentford are going to have a bit more of the ball. They are going to be able to play through midfield further, but they are still going to be a bit more direct, which against Palace, as we saw in central areas, does suit us. But in wider areas, where Bueno drifts and other players work wide, there is clever movement in the Brentford team that in previous years has caused us trouble away from home, going back to the Championship days in particular. So there are a few bits of trepidation there, but I do feel Brentford have weaknesses. The goalkeeper is nowhere near as strong as David Raya, even though I'm not his biggest fan, and I don't think at times this season he's covered himself in glory. And I do feel that Luton will get opportunities on the counter here. It's just whether or not we can be ruthless with them, as we have been in previous games. The Brentford team, though, has been phenomenal since it's been in the Premier League. I know that it's a game we've got to target and look at as a maybe we can get points from, but there shouldn't be any disrespect to a team that have done so well since coming up. And to be honest, betting sponsor aside, they're probably a team we can look at and think that's the way we want to move forward in the Premier League. So really impressive to see them doing well again. Even without Ivan Toney, they've been incredibly competitive. But there's part of me that thinks this game's going to have goals. It's going to have almost more of a championship feel. Two direct teams, a lot of ball outside the central third and in the two opposition thirds. And I do wonder whether or not that the attacks are going to beat defences in this game. Part of me thinks both will be quite susceptible to the style and the pace of counter-attacks from the other. And we've seen it with Brentford before. They prefer countering against teams that have committed men forward, and Luton won't do that quite so much. So there's part of me that thinks Brentford are going to nick this, I've got to be honest with you. I do feel that they are a slightly stronger version of ourselves, playing in probably one of the most similar ways we're going to see to us in the Premier League this year. But the foundations of their success under Thomas Franku is one of the most underrated managers in the Premier League. It's something that is so similar to us. The foundations of the hard work, the community spirit, the team spirit, and having the fans on side. There are a lot of parallels between these two clubs. So for me, I feel that Brentford are going to be a tough challenge. They are probably slightly better at what we do than us. But Luton at the moment are in a little bit of form. A couple of good results in the last 3 games and very competitive at Old Trafford in the other. So based on that, rather than going for 2-1 Brentford, which I was going to go for before, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to stick my neck on the line. And I'm going to hope, maybe rather than expect, Luton to nick a 2-2 draw. I do think it's going to be an entertaining game. I wish it was one I could have got a ticket for. But either way, enjoy it if you're going to make the trip. 2 sets of fans and 2 clubs that have done incredibly well in recent years. We spent most of my childhood playing in the lower divisions of the EFL. So great to see both up and competing in the Premier League. And neither in the bottom 3 at the moment. So that's the story for Brentford v Luton. I've maybe let my heart rule my head a little there. I think it will be either 2-1 Brentford or 2-2. And I'm just being optimistic of the 2 because if we go and look ahead to the rest of the weekend's fixtures, which means having a look back at last weekend and having a quick recap, you will see that the only score I got right was the Luton Town score. I got 3 points for Luton's 2-1 victory against Crystal Palace. Only 6 points overall, but I got the one that mattered right. 3 other correct outcomes for West Ham's win. What a late turnaround for Luton there. Bournemouth's win at Sheffield United and Arsenal's 1-0 win away at Brentford. But overall, it was a very tough weekend to predict, particularly in terms of scorelines, because there were just goals galore almost everywhere. It was a very strange weekend across the board here, though, because not many people managed to get big scores. In fact, everyone who went in the comments section and gave their predictions was separated by 3 points. The lowest being 4, most of you being level with me on 6, and one person nicking 7 points. But there's a fun story behind that. So let me give a quick shout out to those who matched or beat my score. 4 of you level on 6 points with me. Mello and Mitchell both got the Aston Villa score right and picked up 6 points overall. W&G fan and 2014B, you both got 6 points, all for correct outcomes, but no perfect scores this time. But the winner of the match day, fun story, got the least correct outcomes of any person in the comments. Only predicted 3 outcomes correctly, but 2 of them were perfect scores. So Chris, well done to you. You got the one that mattered, Luton Town. And to be fair, you got the Brentford one right last week as well. So you should be calling this game absolutely spot on. You picked up 7 points overall, and perfect scores definitely won you the day. But let's go and move on to match day 14. As always, get your predictions down in the comments as well. A very quick side note, as is often the case for these Premier League ones due to work, I am recording this on the Wednesday, so bar Newcastle last night and Manchester City, I have not been able to take the European action into account. Despite that though, this is what I've gone for this weekend. I'm starting with Arsenal-Wolves, which I think will be a tight and cagey game. Wolves, I don't know what Gary O'Neill's done to upset Howard Webb in his career, but Wolves are having a very tough time with VAR and the officiating teams. A 1-0 win for Arsenal here. Don't be shocked if it's a dodgy penalty. Brentford Luton, you know, I've gone optimistically for a 2-2, but if not, probably 2-1 to Brentford would be my next score prediction. I'm going for Burnley to get a home win against fellow promoted side Sheffield United. It's kind of now or never for both of them, isn't it? A dream result would be a draw for Luton Town, but I think Burnley will pip it by 2-1. I'm going for Forest to surprise Everton by 2-0. Of course, a very good atmosphere at Goodison Park until Garnacho's wonder goal after a couple of minutes. What a way to silence a crowd. Forest at home have had a couple of tough days, but Steve Cooper will get it right if given time. I'm going for them to win this one by 2-0. I've gone for Newcastle to beat United by 1-0. Newcastle so unfortunate at PSG with an absolute ricket of a decision. I can't fathom how that decision was come to for the handball. But as a few people will say, they got a bit of fortune the other way against Arsenal. But still, that was incredibly harsh in the circumstances. Bournemouth against Aston Villa, I've gone for a narrow away win. Thursday night football for Villa, but again, a good performance at Spurs. They're starting to look very decent. And if they can find away form as well, they're going to be one hell of a threat this year. Chelsea v Brighton is going to be one of my thrillers of the week in what I've generally gone for as a low-scoring match day. I've gone for Chelsea to pip it 3-2 because we've seen this season when teams have pressed them, when teams have attacked them, that's when Chelsea have been at their best. So with Thursday night football for Brighton as well, I do fancy Chelsea to get back to winning ways just. I've gone for Liverpool to comfortably beat Fulham by 2-0. Fulham haven't looked that inspiring this year. And aside from the first 10 minutes and 2 penalties, they didn't look that threatening from open play against Wolves. West Ham v Crystal Palace, I've gone for a 2-1 home win. Again, going to be a fairly tight game, a fairly low scoring game. I just fancy West Ham to pip it, particularly the way Palace defended set pieces against us last week. And then my big thriller of the week, 2 teams that will go all out attack, counter versus possession, Manchester City versus Spurs. I think, again, Spurs will probably play into City's hands, but I do think City are a bit more vulnerable defensively than they have been in previous seasons. So as a result of that, the lesser midfield protection than normal, I'm going to go for City to win it, but I'm going to go for goals galore. 4-2 at the Etihad for the home side, and Ange Postecoglou will continue what is now a little mini winless run. So those are my predictions for matchday 14 in the Premier League. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. Remember, we will be back late on Sunday evening with our predictions for matchday 15, which takes place across Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next week. Hopefully that'll be a fun one and you'll come and join me for it. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this, please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. Have a great time if you're going off to the G-Tech, and hopefully it will be a positive result for Luton Town. Of course, the Brentford fans will disagree. I won't hold it against you. If you want to stay up to date with everything on the channel, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Predictions for tonight's championship games are up in the eye above. We'll be back tomorrow to look ahead to the weekend in that competition. There's also our recent interview with Luton legend Marvin Johnson up there, as well as the Twitch channel where we're live regularly with football watch-alongs, and FM24 where we're also managing Luton Town. But thank you very much for watching. Your support is greatly appreciated, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for the weekend predictions for the Championship.